Okay, thanks to Lane and to the library for organizing this celebration of Murray Morgan, the storyteller. Just now, I've learned a moment ago that Gene Sherrard, who is videotaping this few minutes that I present a memory of one story of Murray's, I learned that his grandma was in Murray's class at Lincoln High in Tacoma, which is a nice surprise. This is also the 100-year anniversary of the Big Snow. And when I first learned that Murray had been born during the Big Snow, I think that's true, I always hoped that he would tell me some stories about the Big Snow, because which is silly. He was just born. He wouldn't remember the Big Snow, but I always had sort of a yearning. About 29 years ago, when I was actually working with Lane and Murray on a book, I had him come down and I interviewed him on Channel 9. I was doing a program there every once in a while. And I asked him if he'd bring a few of his books with him. And he said, well, how many? I said, well, bring them all if you can, which he did. And we measured them, and it went up over 4 feet high, these books. And I thought, wow, what a stack of books. And what it was is what a stack of stories, because really what his talent was really for narrative and for truth too, but truth in narrative, let's say, but very entertaining writer. Jenny McCoy and I would frequently go down and have dinner at the Morgan's place in Trout Lake, just north of Tacoma. Usually some friend from out of town would be visiting them, and then they would call in people. And that's where you would hear some of these stories. And you'd hear them not just once, because they wore so well. A good story can be read over and over again, as we know. I remember one in particular, which I'm not going to tell, because I'm hoping that on some of the tapes that the library has, that story will appear. Maybe he told it again through one of his radio shows or something. But I'm just going to give you the kernel of the story, because I think you can appreciate its good humor. It involved a guy whose name I don't even remember. Let's call him Leo. Leo was a high school, an early friend of Murray's, and Leo was inclined to adventure. I think it was he that persuaded Murray to go into boxing. So for a while they were going to gyms and actually pounding on other people and each other. I don't think that lasted long, however. But Leo was required at some point to perform in the Stadium High School, the stadium there, yeah. And it involved the cadets, hundreds of youth dressed in uniforms to put on a show for the military brass. Being a bit of a rebel, he thought up this most beautiful opportunity, took it as a most beautiful opportunity for some performance art, rather than a parade. It was a masquerade. It was a practical joke. And what it involved, and I'm not going to tell the story because, again, I hope that maybe Lane can remember the guy's name and also the story better, but what amazed me was the technical side of it. That is, he had to be able to engineer the dropping of something out of his pockets onto the track around which the hundreds of youth or scores of youth were marching in stiff attention or in stiff regular march for the brass that stood above them in the reviewing stand. What he did is he actually went into some expense. This is during the Depression, so to give some of his hard-earned cash to this performance art was admirable. He took about $10 and cashed it into, I think it was nickels, and stuffed his pockets with it, so that when he was marching, he had engineered a little hole in the bottom of his front pockets. And he could release a nickel at will. That is, he somehow managed to figure out how to turn, maybe the hole was a little bit smaller than the nickel, so if he pushed the nickels, one would pop through. So now you have to imagine the brass standing up in the review stand and all these youth marching in formation in a circle around the stadium. And every once in a while, from the point of view of the brass, someone would bend over, which is completely not something you're supposed to do when you're marching. And what they were really doing, of course, was during the Depression, or if you're a teenager, you see a coin on the ground, you don't let it go, you bend over and pick it up. And that's what they were doing, is picking up these coins. First of all, just a couple, and then he was releasing more and more of them, so that they were bending over and bumping into each other. They were bending over and turning around to retrieve coins that they missed the first time. They were bumping into each other. It completely created well, how about a farrago? It was really upsetting, and it was totally funny to the people who knew it was happening, but also to the people who didn't know it was happening. So, Lane, if you can fill out that story, I've always appreciated it, and it makes me chuckle now. What a wonderful thing to do to the brass. What a wonderful way to express one's feelings about being made to march in stiff attention or stiff routine around the stadium. So that is the episode from one of Murray's stories that I remember I wanted to share. And I think I've probably gone too long already. So thank you, Lane. Thank you very much. I see you. Oh, Gene has just held up a fingers. How many? Did we go 7 minutes? Oh, well, we're only 4 minutes over. Bye-bye, Lane. Bye-bye, library.